Sonic Boom Episode 8, Aim Low, like modern Sonic does. Instead of starting out with an exciting action scene of tension, we immediately see that Eggman's robot was defeated. He reveals another machine but has to warm up, so Sonic destroys it in a single spin dash somehow, and Eggman walks back into his Eggmobile and leaves dejected. There's no way it makes sense that his machinery is made with such flimsy metal that Sonic would beat it in one hit after all his experience with Sonic. I'm glad Amy didn't lecture Sonic on making Eggman sad. The heroes comment that Eggman's just going through the motions and hasn't been doing as well. How are they noticing any kind of difference? He's always lame in this show. Then Eggman watches TV and sees the news reporter Eagle Guy having an advertisement, where he says he'll have a seminar to show people how to be the best they can be. Logically, there's no way he'd agree to take the evil Robotnik into his seminar unless he either didn't know it was him or he was bribed or threatened into it. Logically, he'd be terrified talking to him, or angry. Instead, he casually speaks to him all motivationally one-on-one. I thought Eggman would be among an entire crowd of people, so it would make sense that he wouldn't see him among them. How does it make sense that this guy would willingly try to motivate Eggman? Let alone betray the planet even more by being in his base. It makes sense if he revealed that he has no faith in Eggman to succeed, and thus just trying to make money off him, and thinks there's going to be no harm. That has to be it. Still, he's so cavalier about helping Eggman. Somehow Eggman has no confidence when he looks at his reflection. That's out of character. Then he tells Eggman to show himself how evil he can be. So he's flat out a bad guy, and yet he'll always keep his job. So Eggman melts some kid's ice cream cones with a laser for no reason, and the Eagle doesn't call him out on it. Then he stands with Eggman right in front of the heroes and motivates him to blast a laser at some boulders on a mountain, causing them to roll towards some civilians. So Sonic uses some ropes and his super speed to keep the boulders from hurting people. And Amy talks happily about how Eggman's more creative. Or rather, as creative as he actually should be, and is in other continuities all the time. Why is she happy? Then Eggman fires him out of nowhere, saying that he can do well on his own. I guess because he's sick of having to rely on someone else, and is back to his in-character confidence level. He wonders what he should do, and can't decide. Then he doesn't know what to eat either. So he somehow become dependent on the guidance and advice of the Eagle because he somehow thought he was holding him back after all the help he gave him. This episode kinda sucks. It's too often the show where it tries to be funny and it's just stupid. And I don't see how bad, stupid writing is comedy gold. Unless you're really in the mood to laugh at something bad. But I'm usually not laughing at something bad, I'm just mad at it. Since Eggman hasn't been doing much, Sonic decides to check up on him, only to see Eggman on his couch in his pink pajamas watching TV. And he literally says he's wallowing in his self-pity. He's also watching a soap opera featuring hedgehogs. That'd never be in character for Eggman. He hates hedgehogs, he has since AOSCH. Fortunately, after Sonic briefly thinks this is the life, being free of Eggman, he's back in character and desperate for excitement. So he tries to get Tails to be a proper friend and fails, and he runs off thinking he can have a race with him, only to make his papers fly around. Why do you think he could ever accomplish anything? You know, if Shadow wasn't such a grump, he would make the perfect friend for Sonic, in the sense that he could actually have a race with him. So he could be using his super speed, which he's most known for, and still have fun with them. With all the rest of his friends, he has to hold back, and they slow him down. He also inconveniences Knuckles somehow. I didn't see it because I was looking at the laptop, typing about the last thing he did. That's how quick and unimpactful this was. After making me wonder why he didn't just ask Knuckles to race him in a car again, he sees Amy painting, and all Sonic's friends complain apart from him that they're sick of Sonic's behavior. So Amy says they need to re-motivate Eggman. At least she lampshades that she never thought she'd say that, so the writing was self-aware. But still, I said earlier in the show that the heroes would really be selfish opportunists to do exactly this, and yet they're literally doing exactly this. The heroes waste time because they go to Eggman and Amy says she's here to take him down, Sally would be furious to see that she's not going to do anything to actually take him down. They never even look like they ever want to take him down. They just fight his badniks when they happen to show up to them. Well, the heroes are trying to annoy him out of his base, I guess, because they walk around in front of his couch banging pots and pans. And somehow Eggman isn't bothering them, trying to get them to stop. Then after Sonic shows up, the heroes pretend that Eggman's making them exhausted and they lie down. Somehow Sonic figures it out right away, instead of being generous having a world where his technology can do anything, and believing that he was sucking the life out of them. You'd think that Sonic would be the only one being a selfish opportunist trying to motivate Eggman, but instead, it's so wildly out of character, his friends are the ones doing this, when you'd expect his friends to be more moral than the reckless, irresponsible Sonic is. Out of nowhere, I guess because Sonic was annoying Eggman like he usually does, with no difference, Eggman is motivated to send badniks after him. And the story insists on ending before we can have any kind of action scene with them being destroyed, which is supposed to be Sonic's appeal. Well, that was still a good episode, just an annoyingly uneventful one. I wish it was explained in some way why Soar the Eagle is willingly trying to motivate Eggman. I didn't think he was supposed to be a crazy cartoon villain. Doesn't he realize that if he succeeds and takes over the world, it'll be worse for everybody? It makes sense if they tried to justify it. He's not scared of Eggman, so it's not like he's doing it out of fear. He wasn't threatened into it. Why is the show allergic to having Eggman threaten people? We could have been told that Eggman offered him a really huge sum of money, and so he's just motivating him out of greed. He could have let it slip that he doesn't think Eggman will ever take over the world, and so he's just using him because as he keeps motivating him, he gets paid by the hour. That would have perfectly justified Eggman firing him in a moment of anger and immaturity for having no faith in him, because it'd mean that all of his motivational speech to him was just lies. Instead, Eggman is an idiot, though not unbelievably so. It makes sense that he'd be arrogant like he's supposed to be and thus think he doesn't need him. If anything, it was like character re-realmate, getting him back to the way you'd expect him to be after the entire episode started with him being different from usual, because he, of all people, had no confidence in himself and lost motivation, to the point where he actually thought he needed someone else to be a motivational speaker for him. I feel like only Boom Eggman would even be open to the idea. Even X-Eggman would have too much pride. And it made sense that Sonic would be really bored and desperate for excitement without Eggman to threaten him every day. That was explored in Archie and Fleetway too. But it was forced that he didn't immediately find fun and excitement by just asking Knuckles to compete with him like he always does. Later on in the show, you'll see them racing each other in cars, more than once. So why doesn't he just do that instead of inconveniencing Knuckles accidentally somehow, and then somehow instantly giving up on him when he's his only hope? Why would he ever think Amy and Tails could give him excitement? It just makes it look like Tails is only his friend in the technical sense that he helps him fight Eggman. Because when Sonic went up to him to just hang out, he just wanted to keep to his useless engineering hobby that does nothing in this show. Which just makes it look like Tails is making a mistake by choosing engineering over being the best sidekick to Sonic he can be. Classic Tails wouldn't have this problem. He was always following Sonic in the levels and flying his plane. Same goes for Fleetway Tails, who was based off of him. How is Tails considered his best friend when apparently this is how it always go when Sonic would try to have fun with him? Why does he put up with that? And same goes for Amy. She's not showing similar interests to Sonic and just wants to be left alone to paint. At least it develops her character more that she has a hobby. Tons of hobbies. But still, the Amy Rose I know would jump at the chance to hang out with him, especially one-on-one, and would gladly abandon what she was doing and do what he wanted. Because she's just that loyal to him and admires him that much. Otherwise, that's not Amy. What's the point then? It feels like the writers of the show didn't know what the Sonic characters' actual personalities were. Because Amy's not Amy, Knuckles is definitely not Knuckles. If it's not Amy, then what's the point then? I say the same about Tails, he's supposed to be a better friend than this. He should realize that he can engineer anytime, but Sonic won't always be up and willing to hang out with him one-on-one. Logically, Sonic's friends would play video games with him or sports with him instead of all just wanting to do their own things when their own friend is clearly desperate to have fun with them. The plot could still go in the same direction though, because we could see a montage of them doing stuff together just for Sonic to get bored anyway because he's not actually in danger, which is what he really wants. He could ask Tails to make robots to attack him with, and he'd obviously refuse because he wouldn't want to risk hurting him. So then he could go fight Eggman. It was interesting to see the heroes go to Eggman's base out of sheer boredom and annoy him by banging pots and pans when he's watching TV. Technically speaking, they're acting like little kids would by doing that, with Eggman being the mature adult just being annoyed at them. But it was obviously really out of character for any Eggman to just sit there and ignore that instead of getting up and doing something about it. He'd run at them and chase them around the house, which would look more entertaining. Then Sonic would see that and have a better reason to believe they're in danger and need him to fight Eggman. But the resolution of the episode did make sense. He wants to fight Sonic because he's annoying to him. It's just really weird of Eggman to get that dependent on a motivational speaker for guidance, or anybody at all, to the point where he gives up fighting because he's become indecisive. That's not Robotnik. I appreciate how original and creative the show is with Dr. Robotnik as a character, and it's a good thing he has a different design to match that then, because it makes him more of a separate person entirely from the other Eggmen. But it's still weird to see someone called Eggman that resembles Eggman acting the way he does in this show. Like, they don't know who Robotnik is and just write him however they want. Sonic Boom Episode 8-2. How to Succeed in Evil Without Really Trying. We start out with Styx saying that no one at the Pie Festival will guess that beige berries were a secret ingredient. Oh, so she goes to a pie festival. That would develop her character more if we actually saw her at it. Because she can bake pies. And then she accuses the trees of being spies to steal her recipe. I mean, she does live in a fantasy universe. It's not completely unbelievable that dryads would exist. Then she's paranoid of Tails as well after he shows up with his hovercraft. He still wants to help her out and returns to his lab. He says he needs voltage and there's a lot of trees. And you see Sonic playing volleyball with himself, showing off his speed creatively. Tails gets Sonic to ride on a bike to power his machine just for it to explode because he somehow didn't anticipate that amount of speed, even by this point. And while it looks pretty dark seeing the result of him being exploded on, he's fine next scene. This is the same franchise where a character getting exploded on by an exploding robot put him in a coma for the rest of a comic. This is the same franchise where Rotor hurt his back for a long time because he prevented Tails from being crushed by something heavy falling on him. But according to Sonic Boom, they would have been just fine. At least say that they have rings. That would be fine. He sends an automatic vehicle of his after the trees, which starts destroying the orchard. And he even fails at collecting berries because it sprays them out in berry juice. How could he manage to do that by accident? How would he not know what his own machine did? Some shadowy organization of cloaked people were conveniently right there to spy on Tails, and they want to recruit Tails for evil purposes. And apparently they have a bit of a point, since Tails doesn't like having to replant the orchard, even though Sonic and his friends are supposed to be nature lovers. You'd think he'd love to replant the orchard. It is interesting to see Tails not as pure good as you'd expect him to be, though. I haven't seen him like that since early Archie, where he wanted to trip a swap bot in a hockey game. The problem is, Tails doesn't look nearly kid-like enough for it to be really obvious that he's supposed to be like a kid who's still growing and still learning morality. So if that was the effect they were going for, he needs to be a lot shorter. The group approaches him, and he can't open the Crimson Letter, and he's told he's invited to a potluck dinner at the secret Lightning Bolt Society. Wouldn't it be cool if they could shoot lightning? He gets excited, and he says that he'd love to go off with these strangers. I like that he's so naive, and the writer lampshaded it by having him say that line. Then the Society uses a stolen invention to help do Tails' work for him, and then Eggman shoos the Society away from his garbage, and complains about Tails being hired by them. Why would he ever just throw his inventions in the trash instead of recycling them for his other inventions? It'd make more sense if the Society got their inventions and materials from the remains of his destroyed robots before he get a chance to reuse them himself. Like in an earlier episode, we heard him complaining about how much Badniks cost, so he wouldn't throw his inventions away, he would reuse their materials. He wouldn't care about the cost if, like, I picture Eggman to be extremely rich, so he can always afford stuff. So he'd have to be pretty cheap to care about the cost. The heroes get threatened by a bunch of giant purple evil flowers, and they know what happened to Tails from a letter. I mean, purple is a good color for an evil flower. Tails enjoys some cookies and gives them some berry juice with dirt and twigs. Someone says in front of Tails that he told them Tails was evil with a cheerful tone, and yet Tails doesn't react to this at all. It's interesting that Styx was right that there was a spy among these trees, because one of the members of this group is dressed up like a tree. Like she's rightfully paranoid, because this is a pretty wacky world. But why would he have ever thought to be where Styx was in the first place? It's not like he says that he literally was trying to get her pie recipe. What other information would he want from Styx? Then Tails is called an evil genius, and again, he doesn't react to it at all. Like, they just discovered that Tails had potential in this area. So, like, they were surprised. So, was it really that the tree guy was there specifically to see if Tails had potential in that area? Because they were surprised that he did. The walrus guy looks forward to the group becoming more than small-time crooks. Yeah, with the name like Lightning Bolt Society, they really should be. And Dave wants to control all the fruit in the village. Speaking of Fleetway, like this is another minor sounding, petty sounding evil deed that would actually be pretty bad if it happened for the people. So that would work. But it would require guts for them to actually control all the fruit. And for us to see the consequences of that, and then they get defeated. Only just now does Tails react to the word evil, and the crowd gasps when he tells them that he's not evil, somehow just being awkward about the situation, instead of furiously, vehemently denying that he's evil, and being sad and upset about it. This is the same Tails who was guilty that he screwed things up for his friends in the circus episode, and now he's... Huh? Then Eggman breaks into the building along with Sonic, and he calls the team dolts that he'd never team up with. Well, he is arrogant. He insults them for not having any weapons, and they start throwing the food at the heroes. Good thing there's exciting music playing when they dodge them. Then all the team members start clamoring for Eggman's autograph. This definitely reminded me of the Drat team from SCC, because now they're Eggman's fan club. So, like, why doesn't he just put bombs in them to make them a slave army? Because they're basically volunteering at this point. And you think Eggman would immediately be flattered by someone asking for his autograph and immediately want them to work for him. Then Tails uses his machine from earlier as a Chekhov's gun to kill all of the evil plants effortlessly, making his friends' efforts fighting them completely pointless. Tails sure is cheerful to not be in the slightest sad and upset and guilty about the fact that his tree-destroying machine, which Sad and Robotnik would love to use, was evil enough to get him mistaken for a bad guy. I guess the explanation is that he's confident enough in himself to not let it get him down because he knows he's not evil. But still, he wouldn't have reacted to being called an evil genius by just being awkward about it like it was any old misunderstanding. And he sure as fuck wouldn't have not reacted at all to being called evil the first time. What kind of writing is that? The worst part is, I'm pretty sure that this was intentional and they just thought it would be funny. But bad characterization or writing is not funny. It's confusing and stupid. There's no excuse for it. I did love the idea of this episode, but it didn't go nearly far enough with it. Somehow the heroes found out where Tails was brought to and went to save him in time. He does have a lot of potential as an evil genius, especially with that orchard destruction that he wasn't guilty about at all, but since he's actually good, he'd have to be tricked into it. So this plot was building up to a story where the Lightning Bolt Society tricks Tails into building a whole bunch of inventions by misleading him about what they'll be used for. This could be a story arc. And then we'd see them get used against the village, doing a bunch of stealing to further their plans. That would have been much more interesting than how the plot ended up. This is a significant idea. Why the hell would the heroes be able to find out where Tails was sent to by a secret society that easily? That's stupid. It'd make more sense if there was a Tails radar at his lab that the heroes could track him down with, or he had a tracking device in his goggles just in case. It was always stupid that he has goggles just to never use them when he's flying. It kind of makes him look like an idiot for forgetting he has them every time he flies the plane. And it was also stupid that Tails was complaining about replanting the orchard. This is a good guy, right? He's the least good Tails there is. He's the one who destroyed the orchard. Of course Styx would tell him to replant it. The Tails I know would have volunteered for it. No wonder these guys thought he was evil. And this would work properly if he looked a lot younger, so we could understand that it was just because he was just a kid, just growing up. Sure, they should have known better, since Tails should have been world famous for fighting Eggman all the time, so they should have known who he was. But with a scene like that, where his machine destroyed an orchard, I can't blame them for assuming he changed and became evil, and was trying to lie to his friends about it. Especially since, how do you manage to make that machine like that by accident? How do you screw that up? He made a berry plucking machine, and he didn't anticipate that his friends wouldn't want the trees cut down? Sally would be furious with them. Sonic and his friends are supposed to be nature lovers, from the very beginning of the series, to contrast Eggman, who relies on machinery. So much for that, apparently only Styx cares about nature. Why does Eggman insist on living on a tropical island with trees and bushes everywhere you look, instead of a place without nature? This is the exact opposite of a place that's ideal for Robotnik to live. Where's Robotropolis? Well, he does have a base on a mountain, but it's still on a nature-filled island, isn't it? Or at least close enough to it. He still constantly visits the place without destroying all the trees with missiles. Sadie and Robotnik would have done that, except not because he was too stupid to destroy the Great Forest in the 5 years he was ruling, which was stupid there too. Well, I did always complain about how arbitrary and silly it was that Robotnik hates nature and wants to destroy it with no explanation, but that's because I had no explanation, and at least that was a unique and memorable personality trait that no other Sonic character has, and has been there since the very beginning, so you can't just get rid of it. That's like getting rid of Sonic's cockiness or something. It would have made more sense if Eggman had been the one who destroyed the orchard, and the plot would feel more natural if he had hacked into a machine of Tails to make it do that. And that's why the Secret Society wanted Tails with them. Because Tails got framed instead of somehow doing it by accident with barely any remorse. He was awkward about it, but he didn't get upset and feel terrible, which is how he would actually react. What is it with this show and underwhelming reactions? It's not funny, it's stupid.